So, disclaimer, make sure you don't try any of this unless you have some experience at least with dealing with internals of computers and maybe even some sort of electronics experience, because it won't be my fault if you basically shock yourself, okay? So, whenever you're handling any kind of stuff like this, make sure you unplug everything and everything is powered off and you are absolutely in a safe environment. So maybe your computer won't boot up, or maybe you're just testing some components, but the paperclip test has been a tried and true way of testing to see if a power supply works. So the paperclip test works, as far as I know, for all standard ATX power supplies, which most power supplies are. So why is it called the paperclip test? Well, because you can use a paperclip or any type of conductive metal to test your power supply by shorting out some pins, sticking the power supply into the wall, and if the fan spins, then basically you know that for the most part the power supply is working. In some rare cases, the fan might still spin, but some of the pins might not be outputting enough electricity or something like that, but that's a really rare case, and this is just a way of quickly seeing if your power supply is at least functioning or not. So let's get down to it. So what you're going to need, like I said before, is a paperclip or some type of conductive metal. In my case, I've used a safety pin where I've cut off the sharp end, uncoiled it, and then I cut off the hook end. So I have this nice piece of metal that, yeah, it's conductive and it'll do. But it's called a paperclip test just because most people just find it easier to uncoil a paperclip. I couldn't find a paperclip, but yeah. And second of all, you're going to need your ATX power supply that you are testing out. So here's an important note, and it should be fairly obvious. Make sure that nothing is plugged into the power supply. That means the power supply is off, it is not plugged into the wall, and you don't have any connectors plugged into any components. Okay, so when you've made sure everything is unplugged and the power is switched off, what you're going to do is take your motherboard connector, which is the 20/24 pin one. If the 4 is detachable, you don't even need to worry about that because it's on the big 20 pin piece. So look for the green wire. There's only one green wire, and it's surrounded by a black wire on each side. The green wire should be pin 16 and the black one should be 17 if you have numbers on yours, but most, as far as I know, are not numbered, but some are, and it is 16 and 17. So you're going to want to stick your piece of metal, and this is why it's important to have everything unplugged and powered off. You're going to want to stick it in the green one. Just match up where the end of the green one goes into, stick it in there, and then stick it into the black one next to it. And make sure it's in there and not just like kind of jammed. Make sure it slides in smoothly and is actually connected to each piece of wire. So when it's in there, basically you've created a bridge between the green one and the black one. So after this, position it somewhere where you know it's safe and you won't like bump into it, and plug your power supply in, and then when you're ready, switch on, or if there's no on-off switch, the fan should start spinning. So if your fan is spinning, this means your power supply is at least functioning. So in some very rare cases, you may have a spinning power supply that's just not outputting enough juice or something like that. And in those cases, you'll have to use one of those like little testy things to see if it's actually putting out the right amount or not. But yeah, if it's spinning, then your power supply is working and is functional. Alternatively, you can actually stick it in the back, and I like this way because it seems safer, because it's not just like wobbling around out front. It's tucked in with the rest of the wires. You can just make sure it's tucked into the hole once again and not just caught on the side of the plastic bracket, because it has to make contact with the metal. So I've also done this with a defective power supply that I know has been broken, and even when you're testing something that you know is defective, you should always unplug and power off and everything like that too. So yeah, as you see there, when I flick the switch, nothing happens, so we know that this power supply is faulty. So how this basically works is you're creating a connection between the green, which is the power on wire, and the black, which is the ground. When this happens, the power supply thinks you're plugged into a motherboard, so it kicks up. And that's why you should see the fan spinning, because it thinks it's connected to a computer, and it thinks that the computer just powered on. Because when you press power on your computer, it's actually telling the green wire to start up. And that's why it thinks that the motherboard is connected to it, and that's why it starts spinning up. So yeah, that's it, guys. I hope that helped you test some power supplies. You can use this to test components if you want to, but generally this is just used for like when you want to test a power supply, or if you want to test like a case out and get the fans going and all that stuff. But yeah, if you are permanently gonna leave it like the wire in there and everything, you're going to want to probably wrap it up in electrical tape just so you don't accidentally bump it or anything like that. From what I've heard, it just gives you a shock. It won't like kill you, but I mean, do you really want to find out? So just make sure everything's unplugged. If you're going to leave it there, wrap it up in electrical tape so that you don't accidentally bump into it when you're using it and stuff like that. So yeah, thanks for watching. Make sure to comment and let me know if you found this helpful, and like and subscribe.